People talk about the zombie apocalypse like it's some far-off Hollywood nightmare, a sci-fi script where the dead rise and society crumbles in a single weekend. But if you open your eyes and walk through our urban centers right now, I'd argue we aren't waiting for the apocalypse, we're already living it. Look at the streets, look at the cognitive oblivion, the severe untreated mental illness, the open-air drug markets, the surging crime, and a criminal justice system that behaves like a revolving door. We have hollowed out human beings wandering our neighborhoods in a state of complete detachment from reality. But a collapse like this doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't start on the pavement, it starts in our institutions, it starts in our legislation, and if you trace the pipeline all the way back to the absolute beginning, it starts in our classrooms. A place where more than 1 in 4 Washington students are chronically absent. A place where teachers increasingly report having less authority, less support, and fewer tools to maintain order. A place where protecting students during a violent incident can trigger an investigation of the adult who stepped in. People look at the homeless camps, the fentanyl epidemic, the revolving door criminal justice system, and they ask, how did we get here? Today we're going to follow the pipeline backward from the sidewalks to the institutions to the decisions that helped create the mess we're living with right now. Because this isn't just a public safety story, it's a story about accountability and what happens when a society slowly stops demanding it. From Seattle to Los Angeles, this is Left Coast News. No apologies, just the truth. Welcome back to Left Coast News. People talk about the zombie apocalypse like it's some Hollywood fantasy. A sudden collapse, a single catastrophic event. Civilization falls apart overnight, but that's not how real societal decline works. Real decline happens gradually, one policy at a time, one institutional failure at a time, one lowered standard at a time, until one day you wake up and realize the things that once held society together aren't functioning anymore. Today we're talking about what I call the pipeline of no consequences. A chain reaction that begins in our schools, flows through our institutions, and eventually shows up on our streets. Let's start where the pipeline begins. The death of classroom accountability. Before anybody gets upset, let's establish something. Most kids are good kids. Most parents care deeply about their children. Most teachers are working incredibly hard under difficult circumstances. The problem isn't the majority. The problem is what happens when institutions stop dealing effectively with the minority of people whose behavior negatively impacts everyone else. A society reveals its values by how it handles difficult situations, not easy ones. And increasingly, teachers across Washington describe a system where maintaining order often feels secondary to avoiding complaints, avoiding lawsuits, and keeping discipline statistics low. Consider a recent example involving a Washington teacher. A student became physically aggressive, threw objects, and attempted to attack other students. The teacher executed an emergency evacuation, moved students to safety, and held a classroom door shut for roughly 30 seconds to create enough distance for children to escape. No one was injured, students got out safely, the crisis was contained. But because of Washington's student isolation regulations, the incident triggered a formal review process. Think about that for a moment. The first question wasn't whether students were protected. The first question was whether procedures were followed perfectly during a rapidly evolving emergency. To make matters worse, the teacher's emergency radio wasn't functioning properly during the incident. The safety equipment failed. The teacher improvised. And the system focused on the improvisation rather than the failure. That isn't support. That's institutional paralysis. And teachers are noticing. The numbers don't lie. Education officials often point to Washington's overall rankings, and they're right about one thing. Washington ranks approximately 6th nationally in overall public school quality metrics. The state spends enormous amounts of money on education. So let's ask a simple question. What are taxpayers getting for that investment? The most alarming number may be chronic absenteeism. According to state data, roughly 27% of Washington students are chronically absent. That means more than 1 out of every 4 students misses at least 10% of the school year. In practical terms, that's about 18 days or more annually. Research consistently shows chronic absenteeism is associated with lower literacy rates, lower graduation rates, poor academic outcomes, and greater likelihood of later involvement with the justice system. Yet while absenteeism remains elevated, enforcement has dramatically declined. More than 110,000 students meet the legal definition of truancy in Washington. Yet truancy petitions filed in court have fallen from roughly 12% before the pandemic to just 5.2%. Instead, policymakers have shifted toward what they call supportive interventions. Support is important. Every kid needs support. But support without accountability often becomes permission. And accountability without support doesn't work either. You need both. Right now, many educators feel the balance has swung heavily toward eliminating consequences while hoping support alone will solve the problem. The results suggest otherwise. The teacher exodus. There is another warning sign. Teachers are leaving. National and state surveys consistently identify classroom behavior, burnout, administrative workload, and safety concerns among the biggest reasons educators consider leaving the profession. And honestly, can you blame them? Imagine spending years learning how to educate children only to discover much of your days spent documenting behavior incidents, navigating bureaucracy, and trying to maintain order with fewer tools than ever before. Many educators say the issue isn't simply salary, it's support. People stay in difficult jobs when leadership backs them. They leave when they feel abandoned. When experienced teachers leave, schools lose mentors, students lose stability, communities lose one of their most important institutions. The damage doesn't always show up immediately. Sometimes it takes years. When the pipeline hits the streets. Now let's fast forward. What happens when institutional failures accumulate for years? Eventually, they collide with another crisis, Washington's drug epidemic. According to the Washington Department of Health, the state recorded approximately 3,459 drug overdose deaths in a single year. That is a historic high. Since 2019, Washington's overdose death rate has increased roughly 2.4 times. Fentanyl is involved in as many as 79% of overdose fatalities. And if you want to know why people look like the walking dead out there, look at the polydrug data. Over 42% of all drug deaths in Washington now involve a combination of fentanyl and severe psychostimulants like methamphetamine. It is a chemical cocktail that completely destroys the human brain. That combination is devastating. It destroys judgment. It destroys impulse control. It destroys lives. In Thurston County alone, our state capital, EMS crews respond to between 75 and 100 suspected overdoses every month. Across Washington, Narcan is administered to reverse overdoses between 45 and 60 times every single day. And yet, what is King County's solution? What is our state's legislative response? Handing out free needles, free pipes, free tinfoil, and literal instruction pamphlets on how to safely inject or smoke poison into your veins. They call it harm reduction. They claim success if a drug addict lives another 24 hours without catching a blood disease, while completely ignoring the total destruction of public order, property rights, and community safety. Think about the scale of that. Every day, day after day, month after month. Now here's the uncomfortable reality. Most people suffering from severe addiction didn't wake up one morning and decide to destroy their lives. Many arrived here through years of instability, untreated trauma, mental illness, family breakdown, educational failure, and poor decisions that went uncorrected for far too long. The overdose isn't the beginning of the story, it's the end of the pipeline. By the time someone is smoking fentanyl on a sidewalk, nearly every institution that should have intervened earlier has already failed. The mental health bottleneck. Then we arrive at the final stage, mental illness. Mental Health America ranks Washington near the bottom nationally for adult mental health outcomes. We're 47th out of 50 states. Approximately 1 in 4 adults experiences some form of mental illness each year, yet Washington continues to struggle with a severe shortage of psychiatric beds. The state operates a roughly 9 to 10 psychiatric beds per 100,000 residents. Experts often recommend closer to 50 beds per 100,000 residents. That is a staggering gap. Meanwhile, Washington is spending nearly $1 billion to construct a new facility at Western State Hospital. The problem? Most of those beds are forensic beds. They're reserved primarily for individuals already involved in the criminal justice system. At the same time, the legislature cut approximately $33 million from long-term civil commitment capacity. Those are the beds intended to help severely mentally ill individuals before they commit crimes. Think about the incentive structure. The state would literally rather pay hundreds of millions of dollars in court contempt fines, which they are actively doing under the True Blood lawsuit, than fund a common sense pipeline to mandate treatment for the severely ill wandering our neighborhoods. But we're far less willing to invest before they reach that point. And taxpayers end up paying the difference through emergency services, law enforcement costs, court costs, hospital costs, and declining public safety. When you tie it all together, the picture is crystal clear. It's a design choice. The lawlessness on our streets is a direct mathematical result of the lawlessness we allow in our classrooms. When an educational system penalizes a teacher for holding a door for 30 seconds to protect children from a violent assault, but a public health system gladly hands out clean pipes to a fentanyl addict destroying a public sidewalk, your society is no longer functioning. The zombie apocalypse isn't coming, folks. We built the pipeline for it, we funded it, and we are living in it right now. This isn't about blaming every student. It isn't about blaming every teacher. It isn't about claiming every addict was failed by a school system. Life is more complicated than that. But institutions matter. Standards matter. Accountability matters. Families matter. Communities matter. When schools stop enforcing attendance, when classrooms struggle to enforce behavior, when courts stop enforcing consequences, when mental health systems can't provide treatment, the effects don't remain isolated. They spill into neighborhoods, businesses, emergency rooms, public budgets, and ultimately onto the streets. The condition of our streets is often a delayed reflection of the condition of our institutions. If we want safer communities, fewer overdose deaths, stronger schools, and healthier neighborhoods, we can't keep treating symptoms while ignoring causes. We have to rebuild the pipeline itself because a functioning society isn't built on slogans. It's built on responsibility, expectations, support where support is needed, consequences where consequences are deserved, and institutions that stand behind the people holding that line, the teachers, the paramedics, the police officers, the parents, the people doing the hard work every day while much of society argues about politics. And right now, far too many of them are carrying that weight alone. Thank you for watching Left Coast News. If you got something out of this episode, please like, share, and follow us, and drop a comment below. What do you think about the school situation? We talk about the schools here a lot, and they're pretty screwed up. Do you think we should go back to the old way of disciplining kids at school that act out, instead of teachers spending all their time dealing with 1 or 2 students while the rest of the students who want to be there and learn get ignored? What do you think about the drug problem on the streets and the way it's being perpetuated by certain counties, such as King County, handing out needles and foil and glass pipes to smoke it with, and even written instructions on how to use those drugs? the revolving door of the criminal justice system. What do you think about the state cutting $33 million from the mental health budget? What do you think needs to be done about all the mentally ill? I mean, you see them walking around on the streets every day. Something needs to be done. Tell me what you think. Once again, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.